I never imagined that saving someone's life would change mine forever. But that's exactly what happened on that rainy Tuesday night when I found him slumped against the brick wall behind Santo's kitchen, where I washed dishes for 12 hours a day. The rain had soaked through my thin jacket, plastering my dark hair against my face as I trudged toward the bus stop after my shift. My fingers were pruned and raw from the industrial detergent, and the smell of garlic and grease clung to me despite the downpour. 3 more blocks to the bus, then 40 minutes to my apartment, if you could call that roach-infested studio an apartment. Just another day in the endless cycle of barely surviving. That's when I heard it. A strangled gasp, almost lost beneath the drumming of rain on metal dumpsters. I should have kept walking. In this neighborhood, getting involved meant getting hurt, but something in that sound, desperate, pained, made me stop. Hello? My voice sounded small against the storm. Another gasp, followed by what sounded like a body sliding down brick. I inched around the dumpster, clutching my pepper spray, the only protection I could afford. And there he was. Even collapsed against filthy brick, he looked out of place in this neighborhood. His suit probably cost more than I made in 3 months. Dark hair slicked back, strong jawline now contorted in pain. But it was his eyes that caught me. Piercing gray, like storm clouds, locking onto mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. One hand clutched at his throat, while the other gripped what looked like an EpiPen, still in its case. Allergic, he managed to rasp, pushing the injector toward me with trembling fingers. I didn't think. I just moved. Grabbing the EpiPen, I fumbled with the cap. Your thigh, I said, my nursing school training kicking in. 2 semesters before Mom got sick and the money ran out. I need to inject it into your thigh. He nodded, his breathing growing more labored. I jabbed the pen through his expensive trousers and held it there, counting silently. 10 seconds. His eyes never left mine. When I pulled away, his breathing was still strained, but the horrifying blue tinge to his lips was fading. We need to get you to a hospital, I said, reaching for my phone, the ancient flip phone I kept for emergencies. His hand shot out, surprisingly strong, and gripped my wrist. No hospital, he rasped. You need medical attention. That EpiPen is temporary. Car, black Escalade, end of alley. That's when I noticed the shadow at the mouth of the alley. A mountain of a man standing beside a gleaming black SUV, watching us intently, but making no move to help. Your friend could have helped you, I said, anger momentarily overriding my caution. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Not friend. Security. He struggled to sit up straighter. Marco doesn't approach when I'm like this. Something in his tone raised goosebumps on my arms that had nothing to do with the rain. Who was this man that his own security wouldn't come near him during an allergic reaction? Let me help you to your car, I said, though every instinct screamed to run the other way. He nodded, and I slipped my arm around his waist, feeling solid muscle beneath the soaked designer suit. He smelled expensive, a subtle cologne now mixed with rain and the metallic edge of adrenaline. As we struggled toward the SUV, I felt his body tense against mine. What caused the reaction? I asked, trying to distract him from the pain I knew he must be feeling. Perfume, he said, his voice slightly stronger now. Severe allergy. Woman. Brushed past me. As we neared the car, the security guard, Marco, finally moved forward, opening the door but keeping a careful distance. Hospital, sir? Marco asked, his voice deep and expressionless. No. Home. Dr. Reeves. The interior of the SUV was another world. Soft leather seats, the scent of wealth that I'd only experienced when cleaning the houses of the rich during college. I tried to withdraw once he was seated, but his hand caught mine. Come, he said. It wasn't a request. I need to get home, I protested weakly. My bus. Please. Something flickered in those storm cloud eyes. Secondary reactions can occur. He paused, seeming surprised by his own words. I need you. 3 simple words that shouldn't have affected me, but they did, like a hook beneath my ribs, tugging me forward into the warm interior of his car, into a world I didn't belong in. Marco closed the door behind me, and the sounds of the city disappeared, replaced by the soft hum of the engine and the man's still labored breathing beside me. "Your name," he said, leaning his head back against the seat, eyes closed. "Elena," I answered, suddenly aware of my soaked clothes dripping onto his pristine leather seats. "Elena Vasquez. Elena." The way he said it, like he was tasting it. "I'm Nicolo Russo." The name sent a chill through me. Everyone in the city knew of the Russo family, not from the society pages, from the whispered warnings. They controlled everything from the docks to City Hall, and those who crossed them had a habit of disappearing. I'd just saved the life of the youngest Russo brother, the one they called the Ghost, because his enemies never saw him coming. "You're afraid now," he observed, opening his eyes to study me. "Don't be. You saved my life. The Russos repay their debts." "I don't want anything," I said quickly. "I just did what anyone would do." A low chuckle that dissolved into a cough. "No, Elena Vasquez. What you did is what almost no one would do, especially knowing who I am. I didn't know when I helped you, and yet here you are, still helping." His gaze was penetrating, as if he could see through the layers of caution I'd built around myself. "Most women can't even come near me without triggering a reaction, but you—" He leaned closer, and I felt my pulse quicken. No reaction at all. The car moved smoothly through the rain-slicked streets, turning into neighborhoods I'd only seen in magazines. Historic brownstones with immaculate facades, discreet security cameras tracking our movement. "Why do you react to women?" I asked, genuinely curious despite my fear. "Perfume, makeup, hair products. My body can't tolerate the chemicals. One hint and my throat closes." His voice hardened. "Makes trust complicated." The car slowed before an imposing townhouse, where another suit-clad man waited under the shelter of the entrance. "Dr. Reeves is inside, sir," the man said as Marco opened the door. Nico turned to me. "Come inside. Let my doctor check you too. Your hands are bleeding." I looked down, surprised to see the small cuts on my knuckles, probably from scrambling in the alley. I hadn't even felt them. "I really should get home," I said, but it sounded unconvincing even to my own ears. "It's late, it's raining, and you're injured because of me." His tone softened slightly. 1 hour. Then my driver will take you wherever you want to go." It wasn't just the promise of a warm, dry place that made me nod. It was curiosity, dangerous and compelling, about this man who was deadly allergic to all women, except apparently me. The interior of his home was like something from another century. Soaring ceilings, a grand staircase, artwork that probably belonged in museums. But unlike the sterile mansions I'd cleaned, this place felt lived in. Books stacked on side tables, a half-empty glass of amber liquid on a desk. A distinguished older man appeared from one of the doorways. "Nicolo, this is becoming a habit I don't appreciate," he said, his tone suggesting a familiarity few would dare with a Russo. "Circumstances beyond my control, Doc," Nico replied, his hand still firm on my lower back as he guided me forward. "This is Elena. She administered the epinephrine. Check her hands too. They're cut." Dr. Reeves's eyebrows rose slightly as he looked at me, then back at Nico, standing closer to me than seemed necessary. "Interesting," was all he said. The examination room looked like it belonged in a private hospital, state-of-the-art equipment, in what was once probably a guest bedroom. "Your throat's still inflamed," Dr. Reeves said after examining Nico. "I'm administering a corticosteroid and antihistamine, and you'll stay on the higher dosage protocol for the next 48 hours. He turned to me next, gently cleaning the cuts on my hands. "These need antiseptic, but no stitches. You're lucky. Dishwork can lead to nasty infections." "How did you know I work with dishes?" I asked, startled. He smiled kindly. "The pattern of calluses, the chemical burns from industrial cleaners. I used to volunteer at a free clinic downtown." While he bandaged my hands, I felt Nico watching me from across the room, his gaze intense enough to raise the hairs on my neck. "You should eat something," Dr. Reeves told Nico, "and rest. No work tonight." "I have a meeting I can't miss," Nico replied, his tone making it clear the discussion was closed. Dr. Reeves sighed, packing up his bag. "Your brother should handle it. You need recovery time. Matteo is in Milan until Thursday." Nico straightened his cuffs. a small, deliberate movement that somehow conveyed authority. Elena will stay for dinner before heading home. Not a question. Not even really directed at me. I need to get back, I began. You need to eat, he interrupted. And your bus route stopped running 20 minutes ago. He was right, I realized with dismay. The last bus to my neighborhood had left while we were driving here. I'll call a cab, I said, though the cost would eat into my grocery money for the week. After dinner. His eyes met mine, and I saw something unexpected there. Vulnerability beneath the command, please, let me thank you properly. Dr. Reeves cleared his throat. I'll see myself out. Elena, make sure he uses the inhaler if his breathing changes. He pressed a card into my hand, my number. Call if his condition worsens. After he left, silence filled the room. A charged, expectant silence that made me acutely aware of being alone with a man whose name was spoken in whispers of fear throughout the city. I don't understand why you want me to stay, I said finally. I just did what anyone with basic first aid would do. Nico moved closer, and I resisted the urge to step back. You have no perfume, no scented products, nothing that triggers my reaction, he said softly. Do you know how rare that is, to be able to stand this close to a woman and breathe freely? I swallowed hard. I can't afford fancy products, just soap and water. Something darkened in his expression. Your simplicity saved my life. He gestured toward the door. The kitchen is this way. My staff has the night off, privacy concerns with the doctor's visit. But I can manage pasta. The domesticity of watching Niccolo Russo, feared Mafia enforcer, move around a kitchen was surreal. He shed his suit jacket and rolled up the sleeves of his dress shirt, revealing strong forearms marked with a few scars. His movements were precise, economical, as he prepared a simple pasta dish that smelled divine. You cook, I observed, perched awkwardly on a stool at the massive kitchen island. My grandmother insisted all her grandsons learn, said women couldn't be trusted in the kitchen. A wry smile touched his lips. In my case, she was more right than she knew. Because of your allergies? He nodded, sliding a plate in front of me. Eat. The pasta was perfect, simple, but with a depth of flavor that made me realize how bland my own budget cooking was. This is delicious, I said after a few bites. He watched me eat with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable but somehow wasn't. Why were you in that alley, Elena Vasquez? I work at Santo's kitchen. Back entrance is through that alley, washing dishes. Not a question. He'd noticed my hands, just like the doctor. I lifted my chin slightly. It pays the rent. You had medical training, the way you administered the epinephrine. Confident. Correct. 2 years of nursing school before I had to drop out. I didn't elaborate. My mother's cancer, the mounting bills, the eviction notice. None of that was his business. And now you wash dishes. His tone wasn't judgmental, just considering. Life has not been kind to you. I set down my fork. I don't need your pity. Pity? He looked genuinely surprised. No, Elena. Admiration. You survived. You keep surviving. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression hardening. My meeting, he said, standing. My driver will take you home now. Just like that, dismissed. The brief window into his world closing. Thank you for dinner, I said formally, sliding off the stool. He moved around the island, coming to stand before me, close enough that I could smell the subtle cologne on his skin, see the faint shadow of stubble on his jaw. Elena Vasquez. He said my name like a statement, a declaration. You saved my life tonight. I won't forget that. His hand lifted, hovering near my cheek without touching, as if he wasn't sure he was allowed. Then he reached into his pocket and withdrew a business card, plain white with just a phone number. If you ever need anything at all, call this number. His eyes held mine, intense and unreadable. It comes directly to me, no one else. I took the card, feeling like I was accepting something far more significant than a piece of paper. Goodbye, Mr. Russo. A ghost of a smile. Goodbye for now, Elena. As his driver took me home through the rain-slicked streets, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life had just veered onto a different path. One I hadn't chosen, but somehow couldn't turn away from. The business card burned in my pocket like a promise, or a threat. 3 days passed, and I tried to convince myself that my encounter with Nicolo Russo had been a fever dream, something my exhausted mind had conjured to escape the crushing monotony of my life. But the crisp white business card hidden in my sock drawer was real. So were the perfectly healed cuts on my hands, treated with medicine I could never afford. Elena, table 6 needs clearing and we've got a backup of dishes. Santo's booming voice jolted me from my thoughts. Sorry, I mumbled, grabbing a tray and hurrying to clear the abandoned plates from the corner booth. Santo's kitchen wasn't a bad place to work, all things considered. The owner, a burly Italian immigrant with a heart bigger than his temper, paid better than most restaurants in the area, and occasionally slipped us leftover food at the end of shifts. But after nearly collapsing from exhaustion yesterday, I'd finally admitted I couldn't keep working 16-hour days between here and my morning cleaning job at the office building downtown. Something had to give, and rent was due next week. I was elbow-deep in dishwater when Maria, our hostess, appeared at my side, her eyes wide. "Elena," she whispered, "there's a man asking for you. At the front," my heart stuttered. "What does he look like?" "Huge. Like, scary huge, wearing a suit that costs more than I make in a year." "Marco." It had to be. "Tell Santo I'm taking my break," I said, drying my hands on a towel. Maria caught my arm. "Do you owe someone money? Because my cousin had some guys looking for her last year, and it didn't end." "It's not like that," I assured her, though I wasn't entirely convinced myself. The man waiting by the hostess stand wasn't Marco, but he had the same dangerous stillness, the coiled tension of someone who knew exactly how to hurt people. His eyes scanned the restaurant continuously, one hand resting inside his jacket. "Miss Vasquez," he said when I approached. Not a question. "Yes?" "Mr. Russo requests your presence." A command disguised as an invitation. "I'm working," I said, gesturing to my apron. The man's expression didn't change. "Your employer has been compensated for your absence." He extended an envelope. "For your inconvenience." Inside was more cash than I made in 2 weeks. "Why does he want to see me?" I asked, even as I untied my apron. "Not my place to say, miss." A sleek black Mercedes waited outside, drawing curious stares from passers-by in this neighborhood. The driver opened the door, and I slid into the cool leather interior, expecting to find Nicolo waiting. Instead, I was alone. We drove in silence through the city, eventually pulling up to a towering glass building downtown, Russo Enterprises, according to the discreet sign. I'd passed it before, but never imagined entering. It was the legitimate face of the Russo Empire, rumored to be as ruthless in business as they were in their other endeavors. The driver escorted me through a private entrance and into an express elevator that required a key card. When the doors opened, I stepped into what had to be Nicolo's private office, a sprawling space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. And there he was, standing with his back to me, silhouetted against the afternoon sun, phone pressed to his ear. He wore another impeccable suit, dark gray this time, his posture radiating the casual confidence of a man accustomed to power. "It's non-negotiable," he was saying, his voice cold in a way I hadn't heard before. "Either the shipment arrives intact by Thursday, or you'll need to explain the discrepancy to my brother personally." A pause. "That's what I thought. Don't disappoint me again." He ended the call and turned, his expression instantly softening when he saw me, a transformation so swift it was almost frightening. "Elena," he said, my name like a sigh of relief. "Thank you for coming." "Did I have a choice?" I gestured toward the elevator. "Your man made it seem rather mandatory." A slight frown. "Salvatore can be overzealous. You always have a choice with me." Somehow, I doubted that. "Why am I here, Mr. Russo?" "Nico," he corrected, moving closer. "And you're here because I need your help." I noticed it then. The slight flush to his skin, the barely perceptible wheeze when he breathed. "You're having another reaction." He nodded, loosening his tie slightly. "Minor, controlled, but persistent. You should use your EpiPen if—" "It's not that severe," he interrupted. "But I've been unable to identify the trigger." Understanding dawned. "And you think I can help because I don't trigger your allergies?" "Exactly." He gestured to a seating area near the windows. "My staff has been working remotely for 2 days while we try to isolate the cause." The cleaning crew scrubbed everything with non-allergenic products. A hint of frustration crept into his voice. But something is still affecting me. I moved past him toward the desk, noticing how he inhaled deeply as I passed. What are your usual triggers? Perfumes, cosmetics, scented lotions, most hair products, certain fabrics treated with specific chemicals. He watched me intently as I examined the items on his desk, even some types of ink. I picked up an elegant fountain pen. This is new? Surprise flickered across his face. Yes. A gift from a business associate yesterday. How did you know? I held it up. The cap has leaked a little. Smell it. He kept his distance. I can't get that close without risking a severe reaction. Then trust me. It's scented ink, lavender and something else. Probably handmade by someone trying to impress you. I placed it in the wastebasket. You should have this whole area wiped down. Relief washed over his features. You identified in seconds what my entire security team couldn't in 2 days. I shrugged. I grew up helping my grandmother make herbal remedies. You develop a sensitivity to scents. Your grandmother was a healer? In her village in Mexico, yes. Here, she was just a cleaning lady, I said, surprised by the bitterness in my voice. Like me. He stepped closer, and I noticed how carefully he moved, as if afraid I might bolt. You're much more than that, Elena Vasquez. Something in his tone made my chest tighten. Mr. Russo. Nico. He insisted softly. Nico. I should get back to work. I have a proposition for you. He gestured toward the seating area again, and this time I followed. A job offer. I perched on the edge of a leather armchair that probably cost more than my entire apartment. I already have 2 jobs, which pay barely enough for you to survive. He sat across from me, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. I'm offering you a position as my personal assistant. I stared at him. That's absurd. I have no qualifications. You have the only qualification that matters. You don't make me stop breathing. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. And you're observant, intelligent, and clearly in need of better employment. How would you know what I need? The question came out sharper than I intended. His gaze didn't waver. Your shoes are worn through at the soles but carefully polished. Your clothes are cheap but immaculately clean. Your hands show the damage of harsh chemicals, but you've applied petroleum jelly to prevent cracking. He leaned back slightly. You're someone who takes pride in appearance despite limited means. Someone who works harder than most, but has been dealt an unfair hand. The accuracy of his assessment left me speechless. The salary is 10 times what you currently make, he continued, plus health insurance, which I suspect you don't have. My mind reeled. That kind of money would change everything. I could pay off my mother's medical debts, maybe even go back to school. What exactly would this job entail? I asked cautiously. Screening my visitors and belongings for potential allergens, attending meetings when female associates are present, as my buffer, managing my personal calendar and correspondence. He held my gaze. Nothing illegal. Nothing intimate. The last word hung between us, charged with unspoken possibility. Why me? You could hire professionals, medical specialists. I have. None can be around me consistently without triggering reactions. His expression grew distant. Do you know what it's like to live in constant fear that the next person who comes near you might stop your breathing? To never know if a handshake might kill you? I thought of my mother in her final days, gasping for air as cancer strangled her lungs. Yes, I said softly. I do. Something passed between us then, a current of understanding that transcended the vast differences in our lives. 1 month, he said. Try it for 1 month. If you're unhappy, I'll arrange any job you want elsewhere. I need to think about it. He nodded, reaching into his pocket and extracting a small card. My private address. Come there tomorrow morning at 9 if you accept. If not, he paused. I'll understand. Marco was waiting with the car when I left the building, my mind still spinning with the impossible offer. As he drove me back to Santos, I stared out at the city streets, at the people hurrying past, living lives so different from the one I'd just been offered a glimpse of. He doesn't do this, Marco said suddenly, breaking the silence. I turned. Do what? Bring outsiders in. His eyes met mine briefly in the rearview mirror. The boss doesn't trust easily. His condition makes it impossible. Then why me? Marco's expression revealed nothing. That's what we're all wondering. When I returned to Santos, the owner pulled me aside, his expression uncharacteristically serious. A man came in after you left. Paid your wages for the next month in advance. His bushy eyebrows drew together. What kind of trouble are you in, Elena? No trouble, I assured him. Just an opportunity. He studied my face. The Russos. I know their cars. They're men. He lowered his voice. Be careful, mija. Those people, they don't live by the same rules as us. That night, I sat on my threadbare couch, staring at the 2 cards in my hands, the phone number and the address. Outside, sirens wailed, and somewhere down the hall, a couple screamed at each other through thin walls. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The choice is yours, but know that you're safe with me. Somehow, he'd gotten my number. I should have been frightened by that. Instead, I felt a strange flutter in my chest. Something I hadn't felt in so long I barely recognized it. Hope. The next morning, I stood before my cracked bathroom mirror, examining my reflection. I'd worn my one good outfit, black slacks and a simple blue blouse I'd bought for job interviews. My dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun, my face bare of makeup. Not out of consideration for Nico's allergies, but because I'd never been able to afford more than the occasional drugstore lipstick. I thought of my mother then, how she'd worked 3 jobs to put me through nursing school, how she'd made me promise to build a better life than hers. Don't let circumstances define you, mija, she'd said, even as cancer ate away at her. Choose your own path. Was this my path? Working for a man whose very name made people tremble? At exactly 8:45, I knocked on the imposing door of Niccolo Russo's townhouse, my second-hand suitcase containing everything I owned beside me. Marco opened the door, surprise briefly flashing across his stoic features. You came, he said, stepping aside. I came, I replied, lifting my chin slightly. Where's Mr. Russo? In the garden. He's been there since dawn. Something like respect glimmered in Marco's eyes. He wasn't sure you'd accept. The garden was a surprising oasis of green behind the townhouse, a hidden courtyard filled with carefully tended plants and a small fountain. Nico sat at a wrought iron table, reading from a tablet, a cup of espresso at his elbow. He looked up as I approached, and the naked relief on his face made my heart stutter. You came. He echoed Marco's words, rising to his feet. I have conditions, I said, summoning my courage. A smile touched his lips. Of course you do. I won't break the law. I won't lie for you. And I won't be available for my personal matters. The smile widened slightly. Understood. Anything else? I want 2 days off each week, and I want a written contract. He gestured to a folder on the table, already prepared, including a confidentiality clause that protects you as much as it protects me. I sat across from him, aware of the surreal contrast between us. Him in another immaculate suit despite the early hour, me in my second-hand clothes, carrying my entire life in one shabby suitcase. Why are you really doing this? I asked as he pushed the folder toward me. There must be safer ways to manage your condition. He was quiet for a long moment, his gray eyes studying me with an intensity that made my skin warm. In 29 years, he said finally, you're the first woman who's been able to touch me without sending me into anaphylactic shock. The first woman whose skin doesn't make mine burn. His voice dropped lower. Do you have any idea how significant that is? I swallowed hard. It's just a medical anomaly. Is it? He leaned forward slightly. Or is it something else entirely? Before I could respond, the garden door opened, and a tall, powerfully built man stepped out, older than Nico by perhaps 5 years, with the same storm-gray eyes but none of the restraint in his bearing. So, this is the miracle girl, he said, his gaze raking over me assessingly. Nico stood immediately, his posture shifting subtly. Matteo, you're back early. Clearly, Matteo Russo, the eldest brother and head of the family, moved closer, extending his hand to me. Matteo Russo, and you must be Elena. I shook his hand, acutely aware of Nico's tension beside me. Yes, sir. No need for sir. We're practically family now, aren't we? His smile didn't reach his eyes. After all, you'll be living here, in our family home. I looked at Nico sharply. Living here? That wasn't mentioned. It's the most practical arrangement, Nico said, shooting his brother a warning glance. For your safety as much as convenience. My safety? I echoed. Matteo laughed, the sound lacking warmth. Oh, little brother, you haven't told her? He turned to me. Once people know you're under Nico's protection, that you're special to him, you become a target. Matteo! Nico's voice held a dangerous edge. Enough, but Matteo merely shrugged. She should know what she's walking into. He turned to leave, then paused. Welcome to the family, Elena Vasquez. I hope you survive the experience. As the door closed behind him, silence fell over the garden. Even the birds seemed to have stopped singing. Your brother seems intense, I said finally. Nico's jaw was tight. Matteo has his own way of testing people. Is he right? Am I in danger? He met my gaze directly. Not as long as you're with me. Not a denial, I noticed. A promise of protection instead. The living arrangement, I began, struggling to keep my voice steady. I can't. You'd have your own suite, he interrupted. Completely private, with your own entrance if you prefer. His expression softened slightly. I'm not trying to trap you, Elena, but Matteo is right about one thing. Being associated with me comes with risks. I thought of my apartment, with its faulty locks and paper-thin walls. Of the neighborhood where even the police hesitated to respond. I need to get my things, I said finally. Relief washed over his features. I'll send Marco with you. As I signed the contract that would change my life forever, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was signing away more than just my labor. That with each stroke of the pen, I was binding myself to this dangerous man in ways I couldn't yet understand. What I didn't know then was that Niccolò Russo had plans for me that went far beyond allergy prevention. Plans that would draw me deeper into his world of shadows and secrets. And that by saving his life that rainy night, I had unwittingly altered the course of my own forever. Living in Niccolò Russo's world was like stepping into an alternate reality where ordinary rules didn't apply. During my first week as his personal assistant, I witnessed more displays of wealth and power than I'd seen in my entire life. My suite in the townhouse was larger than any apartment I'd ever lived in. A bedroom with a king-sized bed, a sitting room with bookshelves that reached the ceiling, and a bathroom with a tub I could actually stretch out in. It felt like a hotel, not a home, but I adapted quickly to the soft sheets and hot water that never ran out. My duties were straightforward, but strange. Each morning, I checked Nico's schedule and screened any items that had been delivered. I attended his meetings when female clients or associates would be present, standing silently behind his chair like some kind of human shield. I vetted the cleaning products used in his spaces, inspected his food for potential cross-contamination, and tested any new clothing for chemical treatments before he would touch it. Most of his staff kept their distance from me, clearly unsure of my role and status. Only Marco treated me with something approaching friendliness, though even he maintained a professional reserve. The boss seems better since you came, he remarked one afternoon as we waited in the car outside a downtown office building. More at ease, I glanced at him, surprised by the personal comment. His allergies are under control. Marco's expression revealed nothing. It's more than that. Before I could question him further, Nico emerged from the building, his phone pressed to his ear. Even from a distance, I could see the tension in his shoulders, the controlled anger in his movements. When he slid into the car beside me, I caught the tail end of his conversation. Don't care how you handle it. Just make sure it's clean. His eyes met mine briefly as he ended the call. Change of plans. We're going to the docks. Marco nodded, putting the car in drive without question. Is everything okay? I asked quietly. Business complications, Nico replied, loosening his tie slightly. Nothing for you to worry about. I should have left it at that. My contract explicitly stated that I was employed for health-related assistance only, not his other business interests. But something in his expression, a weariness beneath the controlled exterior, made me press further. You're having a reaction, I observed. Your breathing's changed. Surprise flickered across his features. It's mild. Let me see your inhaler. He raised an eyebrow at my commanding tone, but reached into his jacket and handed me the small device. I checked the dosage indicator. You've been using this too often, I said. Dr. Reeves said. I'm aware of what Dr. Reeves said. A hint of irritation crept into his voice. Then you're aware you're ignoring medical advice. I met his gaze steadily. What triggered it this time? For a moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he sighed, running a hand through his immaculate dark hair. A rare gesture of frustration. The meeting. One of the board members, a woman, apparently changed her perfume. His jaw tightened. 30 years of managing this condition, and I'm still at the mercy of someone's cosmetic choices. The bitterness in his tone caught me off guard. For all his power, all his wealth, Niccolò Russo was still vulnerable in ways few would understand. It must be exhausting, I said softly. Always being on guard. His eyes met mine, something unreadable flickering in their depths. Yes, he said simply. It is. The car slowed as we approached the waterfront district, a maze of warehouses and loading docks controlled by the Russo family for generations. Marco pulled up outside a nondescript building, where two men in suits stood watch. Wait in the car, Nico instructed me. This won't take long. I nodded, but as he moved to exit, I caught his sleeve. Use the inhaler before you go, full dose. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Yes, ma'am. Through the tinted windows, I watched him stride toward the building, flanked by Marco and the other guards. Even from a distance, his authority was palpable. In his posture, his movements, the way others deferred to him instantly. I'd been careful to maintain professional distance between us since taking the job. But moments like this made it difficult. There was something magnetic about Niccolò Russo. Something beyond his physical appeal or his power. A complexity that drew me in despite my better judgment. 20 minutes later he returned, his expression grim but controlled. He said nothing as the car pulled away, staring out at the grimy dockside streets with unseeing eyes. Bad news? I ventured. His gaze shifted to me. Someone made a miscalculation. It's been corrected. The coldness in his tone sent a shiver down my spine, a reminder of exactly who I was working for. Whatever had happened in that warehouse, I didn't want to know. That evening, as I organized his medication for the next day, Nico appeared in the doorway of my suite, something I hadn't seen him do before. He'd always been careful to respect my private space. I have a dinner meeting tomorrow night, he said. I need you to attend. I looked up from the pill organizer. What kind of meeting? Social. A potential business partner and his wife. He leaned against the doorframe, his tall frame filling the space. It would be helpful to have you there. As your allergy buffer? I asked, trying to keep my tone light. As my date. The word hung in the air between us, charged with implications. I don't think that's appropriate, I said carefully. He stepped into the room, his movements deliberate. These people respond to certain appearances. A man of my position, dining alone, raises questions. And a man of your position with his employee doesn't? A hint of amusement touched his eyes. In my world, Elena, that's the least questionable arrangement people might imagine. I set down the medications, turning to face him fully. I'm not comfortable pretending to be something I'm not. Who said anything about pretending? His voice lowered slightly, sending an unwelcome warmth through my body. You'd be having dinner with me, nothing more. Then call it what it is, a work obligation, not a date. He studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. As you wish. A work obligation. He moved closer, and I caught the familiar scent of his cologne. Subtle, expensive, now strangely comforting. Though I suspect others will draw their own conclusions regardless. I don't have anything suitable to wear, I said, grasping for practical objections. Already taken care of. He gestured toward my closet. The dress should arrive tomorrow morning. Hypoallergenic fabric, no chemical treatments. Of course, he'd anticipated my acceptance. Men like Niccolò Russo weren't accustomed to hearing no. Fine, I said, trying to ignore the flutter in my stomach. But just dinner. Nothing else. Something darkened in his gaze. What exactly do you think I'm asking of you, Elena? The question caught me off guard. I just meant, I've never used my position to coerce anyone. he interrupted, a edge to his voice. "Especially not a woman. Despite what you might think of my family, of me, I have lines I don't cross. Shame washed over me. For all his dangerous reputation, he'd never been anything but respectful toward me. I'm sorry," I said softly. "I didn't mean to imply—" "Yes, you did." His expression softened slightly. "And given your circumstances, I understand your caution. But know this." He stepped closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his gaze. "You're safer with me than anywhere else in this city. Not because I own half of it, but because I've given you my protection." "Do you understand what that means?" I swallowed hard. "I think so." "No, you don't." His voice was gentle now, almost sad. "But you will." The dress that arrived the next morning was simple but elegant, deep blue silk that draped perfectly, revealing enough to be flattering but modest enough to be appropriate. Alongside it came a small box containing a silver pendant on a delicate chain, a small stylized wolf. The note simply read, "A reminder of my protection. I shouldn't have worn it." The gift crossed the careful boundary I'd established between employer and employee, but as I fastened it around my neck that evening, I couldn't deny the thrill that ran through me at the sight of it against my skin. The restaurant was the kind of place I'd only seen in magazines, discreet, elegant, with a view overlooking the city lights. As we were led to our table, I felt eyes tracking our movement, assessing, speculating. Nico's hand rested lightly on my lower back, a possessive gesture that sent warmth spreading through me despite my resolve to remain professional. "Everyone's staring," I whispered as he held my chair. "Not at us," he corrected, taking his seat across from me. "At you." I glanced around nervously. "Why?" His eyes held mine, intense and unreadable. "Because you're beautiful, and because you're with me." Before I could respond, our dinner companions arrived, a silver-haired man with cold eyes, and a much younger woman dripping in diamonds. I recognized him immediately from news coverage. Victor Mercer, a real estate developer with rumored mob connections of his own. "Niccolo?" Mercer greeted, his gaze sliding to me with barely concealed interest. "I see you finally found a woman who doesn't send you into shock." I felt Nico tense beside me, though his expression remained pleasant. "Victor, Mrs. Mercer, this is Elena Vasquez, my personal assistant." Mrs. Mercer, who couldn't have been more than 25, offered a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. How fascinating. And what exactly does a personal assistant to Niccolo Russo do? The implication in her tone was unmistakable. "I help him breathe," I replied simply. Nico's lips twitched with suppressed amusement as he reached for his water glass. Throughout dinner, I watched the careful dance between the men. The subtle negotiations disguised as casual conversation, the underlying tensions that occasionally surfaced before being smoothed away. Mrs. Mercer largely ignored me after her initial assessment, focusing instead on displaying her jewelry and dropping names of celebrities she claimed to know. "The waterfront project requires certain clearances," Mercer was saying, swirling his bourbon. "Clearances your family has historically facilitated, for the right partners," Nico replied smoothly. "Those who understand mutual benefit." Mercer's eyes narrowed slightly. "And what would benefit the Russos in this arrangement?" 20% equity, plus exclusive distribution rights through our shipping channels." A tense silence fell over the table. I kept my expression neutral, though internally I was reeling at the casual discussion of what was clearly not entirely legitimate business. 15%, Mercer countered. "Your family's influence isn't what it once was, especially with the Costello crew expanding northward." Something dangerous flashed in Nico's eyes, there and gone so quickly I might have imagined it. "The Costellos are a temporary concern." The rest of the dinner passed in a blur of expensive wine and veiled conversations. By the time we left the restaurant, the tension between Nico and Mercer had settled into something resembling an agreement, though I couldn't have explained the exact terms if asked. The night air was cool against my skin as we waited for Marco to bring the car around. Mercer and his wife already departed in their own sleek vehicle. "You did well in there," Nico said quietly, his breath forming small clouds in the chilly night. "Most people get nervous around Victor." "I work for you," I replied. After that, Mercer seems relatively harmless. A genuine smile curved his lips, a rare sight that transformed his face, making him look younger, less burdened. "You're not afraid of me anymore." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "I'm cautious. There's a difference." His hand came up, fingers lightly touching the wolf pendant at my throat. The casual intimacy of the gesture made my pulse quicken. "Caution is wise," he murmured. "Fear is not." Marco pulled up then, saving me from having to respond. The drive back to the townhouse was silent, but charged with something I couldn't, or wouldn't, name. When we arrived, Nico escorted me to the door of my suite, pausing as I turned to bid him good night. "Thank you," he said, his voice low. "Your presence made a difference tonight." I barely said anything. "You didn't need to." His eyes held mine, intense in the dim hallway light. Mercer was testing me, watching for weaknesses, and what did he see? Something flickered in his gaze. That's what concerns me. Before I could ask what he meant, he'd stepped back, creating distance between us. "Good night, Elena." That night, I dreamed of gray eyes and wolf pendants, of silk dresses and dangerous men who protected what was theirs. The next morning, Marco was waiting when I emerged from my suite. "The boss had to leave early," he explained, his expression carefully neutral. "Asked me to take you shopping." I blinked in confusion. "Shopping? For what?" "Clothes, for the gala tomorrow night." This was the first I'd heard of any gala. "I'm not going to a gala." Marco's expression didn't change. "Boss's orders. Annual charity event for the children's hospital. Whole family attends." Dread settled in my stomach. Meeting Matteo had been intimidating enough. The prospect of facing the entire Russo clan made my knees weak. "I don't think—" "Not optional," Marco interrupted, his tone gentler than his words. "He needs you there." 3 hours later, I found myself in an exclusive boutique downtown, surrounded by dresses that cost more than 6 months of my former rent. The sales associate, a willowy blonde who'd initially looked down her nose at me, had become obsequiously helpful once Marco mentioned the Russo name. "Mr. Russo specified nothing with synthetic fibers or chemical treatments," she explained, pulling a stunning emerald gown from the rack. "We've selected pieces that meet his requirements." I ran my fingers over the silk, marveling at its softness. "This is ridiculous. I don't belong in clothes like these." Marco, who'd been standing silently by the door, spoke up. "The boss disagrees. By the time we returned to the townhouse, I had a gown, shoes, and understated jewelry that cost more than everything I'd ever owned combined." Marco carried the boxes to my suite, setting them carefully on my bed. "Why is he doing this?" I asked as he turned to leave. "I'm his employee, not his—" I broke off, unsure how to finish the sentence. Marco studied me for a moment. "In the 3 years I've worked for Mr. Russo, you're the first woman who's been able to stay in the same room with him for more than 10 minutes without triggering an attack." His usually stoic expression softened slightly. "Do you have any idea how significant that is to someone who's been isolated his entire life?" The question stayed with me as I prepared for the gala the following evening, carefully applying the minimal makeup I owned. In the mirror, a stranger looked back at me, transformed by the emerald silk that draped perfectly over my curves, by the delicate gold earrings that caught the light when I moved, by the wolf pendant that now seemed to belong against my skin. When I emerged from my suite, Nico was waiting in the hallway, magnificent in a tailored tuxedo that emphasized his broad shoulders and lean strength. His eyes widened almost imperceptibly as he took in my appearance. "Elena?" he said softly, the word carrying a weight I didn't dare interpret. "Is this appropriate?" I asked, suddenly self-conscious. "For your family's event?" He moved closer, his gaze never leaving mine. "You look perfect." The gala was held at the Russo family's ancestral mansion outside the city, a sprawling estate surrounded by manicured gardens and discreet security personnel. As we drove through the imposing gates, I felt my anxiety mounting. "Your entire family will be here?" I asked, smoothing my skirt nervously. "Yes, and our business associates, political contacts, and various beneficiaries of our charitable foundation." His hand covered mine, warm and reassuring. "Stay close to me. You'll be fine." The mansion's grand ballroom was already crowded when we arrived, a glittering assemblage of the city's elite, mingling beneath crystal chandeliers that cast prismatic light across marble floors. As we entered, a hush fell over the nearest group, eyes turning to assess us, or more specifically, me. Nico's hand settled protectively at the small of my back as he guided me through the crowd, stopping occasionally to exchange greetings. I noticed how people deferred to him, the respect tinged with wariness in their eyes. "Nicolo," a musical voice called, and we turned to face a strikingly beautiful older woman approaching with Matteo at her side. "You're finally here." "Mother," Nico greeted, leaning down to kiss her cheek. "You remember Elena, Sophia Russo." The family matriarch, whose beauty had barely faded with age, assessed me with shrewd eyes that missed nothing. "Of course. The miracle girl who doesn't make my son sneeze." Her accent was subtle but unmistakable, her smile not reaching her eyes. "How convenient. It's an honor to meet you properly, Mrs. Russo," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Your home is beautiful." "It's been in our family for 4 generations," she replied, her gaze flickering to the wolf pendant at my throat. Something hardened in her expression. "Matteo, darling, would you get me a fresh drink and perhaps show Nicolo to the Verrucchis? They've been asking for him." It was a dismissal, thinly veiled. Matteo caught his brother's eye, some silent communication passing between them. "I'll find you later," Nico told me, his hand squeezing mine briefly before releasing it. "Mother will keep you company." As the brothers moved away, Sophia linked her arm through mine, her grip firmer than necessary. "Let's find somewhere quieter to chat, shall we?" She led me to a small sitting room adjacent to the ballroom, closing the door behind us. The music and chatter faded to a distant murmur. "So," she said, settling gracefully onto a brocade settee, "you've captured my son's attention quite thoroughly." I remained standing, suddenly very aware of my secondhand upbringing in this room filled with priceless antiques. "I work for your son, Mrs. Russo. Nothing more," a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "The pendant you're wearing suggests otherwise." My hand instinctively went to the silver wolf. "It was a gift." "Yes," she agreed, her voice sharpening. "The Russo wolf, a symbol of our family's protection, given only to those considered under our care." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "My husband gave me one on our wedding day. I gave each of my sons one at their births." The significance of the pendant suddenly weighed heavily against my skin. I didn't know. Clearly. She studied me, her assessment coolly calculating. "What do you want from my son, Miss Vasquez?" "Nothing," I said honestly. "I needed a job. He offered one." "There are easier ways to make money than attaching yourself to a Russo." She leaned forward slightly, especially one with Nicolo's. "Limitations. His condition doesn't limit him," I countered, surprising myself with my defensiveness. "It just means he has to be more careful." Something flickered in her eyes, surprise, perhaps, or reluctant approval. "You speak of his allergies, I speak of his position." She gestured elegantly toward the door. "Everyone out there? They fear my sons, respect them, need them, but they don't love them." Her gaze pierced mine. "Could you love a man who does what my son must do to protect our family?" The question caught me off guard. "I don't see how that's relevant to my employment." Sophia's laugh was soft, but without humor. "You wear my family's symbol around your neck, yet claim to be just an employee?" She shook her head slightly. "Nicolo has never shown interest in a woman before. His condition made it impossible. Now you appear. This miraculous exception, and suddenly he brings you into our home, introduces you to our world." Her eyes hardened. "So I ask again, what do you want from my son?" "To help him," I said simply. "That's all." She studied me for a long moment, as if weighing the truth of my words. "We protect our own, Miss Vasquez. Fiercely. Remember that." Before I could respond, the door opened, and Nico appeared, his expression darkening as he took in the scene. "Mother," he said, his voice carrying a warning, "the mayor is asking for you." Sophia rose gracefully, patting my cheek as she passed. "Think about what I said, dear." To her son, she added softly, "Be careful, Nicolo. Not everything that seems miraculous is a blessing." Once she'd gone, Nico turned to me, concern evident in his features. "What did she say to you?" "Just getting to know me," I replied, not wanting to create tension between them. "She's protective of you, She's interfering, he corrected, moving closer. Are you all right? I nodded, though my mind was still spinning from Sophia's words. The pendant, I said, fingers touching it. You never explained what it means. Something flickered in his eyes. It means you're under my protection. Your mother said she gave one to each of her sons at their births, that your father gave her one when they married. I met his gaze directly. It's a family symbol. He didn't look away. Yes. Then why give it to me? He was silent for a moment, then reached out, his fingers brushing mine. Come with me. There's something I need to show you. He led me through a series of corridors, away from the noise of the gala, up a grand staircase to what appeared to be the family's private wing. We stopped before a heavy wooden door, which he unlocked with a small key. My childhood room, he explained, ushering me inside. The space was large but surprisingly austere. Bookshelves lining one wall, a desk positioned before tall windows, a bed with simple linens. Unlike the opulence of the rest of the mansion, this room was functional, almost Spartan. Look, he said, gesturing to the walls. I moved closer, studying what I'd initially taken for a textured wallpaper. Instead, I found thousands of tiny handwritten notes, dates, times, and clinical observations. My allergy journal, he explained, watching me. Every reaction, every trigger, documented from age 7 when the symptoms began. I ran my fingers over the meticulous records, each representing a moment of suffering. You've lived your entire life like this, documenting your own isolation, until you. He moved to stand beside me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his body. Do you understand now? Why you're different? I turned to face him, suddenly very aware of our proximity, of the intensity in his gaze. Nico, A sharp knock at the door interrupted whatever I might have said. Marco's voice called through the wood. Boss, there's a situation downstairs. Nico's expression hardened instantly. What kind? Costello's men. They're asking for you. A muscle ticked in Nico's jaw. Get Matteo. I'll be right down. To me, he added softly. Stay here. Don't come downstairs until I come for you. What's happening? I asked, a cold dread settling in my stomach. Just business, he replied, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the dangerous glint in his eyes. Nothing for you to worry about. As the door closed behind him, I stood alone in the room documenting his lifelong isolation, surrounded by the ghosts of his pain, wondering what new danger awaited downstairs, and what it might mean for both of us. I waited in Nico's childhood room for what felt like hours, pacing between the walls covered in his meticulous documentation of suffering. Each notation represented a moment of pain, of isolation, a life spent at arm's length from the world. The contrast between the austere bedroom and the opulence of the rest of the mansion struck me as profoundly sad. While the Russo family lived in luxury, their youngest son had existed in a clinical environment, cataloging his own limitations. A muffled shout from downstairs broke my reverie, followed by what sounded like breaking glass. I moved to the door, pressing my ear against the wood. More raised voices, though I couldn't make out the words. I should have stayed put as Nico instructed. Instead, I slipped off my heels and crept barefoot into the hallway, following the sounds of confrontation. At the top of the grand staircase, I paused, peering down into the foyer below. The scene that greeted me sent ice through my veins. 6 men in dark suits faced off against the Russo brothers, tension radiating from both groups. Matteo stood slightly ahead of Nico, his posture aggressive, while Marco and 2 other security men flanked them, hands resting inside their jackets. You have some nerve showing up here, Costello, Matteo was saying, his voice carrying easily in the marble foyer. At our family event, a lean, hawkish man with silver at his temples stepped forward. When invitations to civil conversation are ignored, alternatives become necessary. His gaze shifted to Nico. We know it was your men who hit our shipment. 50 million in product disappeared. Nico's expression revealed nothing. Serious accusations require serious evidence. Costello's laugh was cold. We both know the rules of this game, Russo, and you've broken them. His eyes narrowed. The old arrangements are changing. This city isn't just yours anymore. The quiet way he delivered the threat was somehow more chilling than any shouting could have been. You come to my family's home, Mateo responded, his voice dangerously soft. Threaten us before our guests, and expect what? That we'll surrender territory my grandfather secured with his blood? One of Costello's men moved slightly, and immediately every Russo guard tensed, hands shifting inside jackets. I expect recognition of changing realities, Costello said. The council meets next week. We'll formalize new arrangements then. His gaze slid to Nico again, unless there are further misunderstandings before then. As he turned to leave, his eyes lifted to the staircase and locked with mine. A slow, predatory smile spread across his face. Ah, he said softly. The famous Elena Vasquez, the miracle cure for the allergic dawn. He offered a mocking bow. Your reputation precedes you, my dear. Every head turned toward me. Nico's expression transformed from controlled anger to something I'd never seen before, naked fear. Elena, he said, his voice tight, go back upstairs. But Costello was already moving toward the staircase, his men remaining in position. So this is the woman who doesn't make the untouchable Russo sneeze. He studied me with calculating eyes. Fascinating. I wonder what makes you so special. I felt frozen under his assessment, acutely aware of my vulnerability in the emerald gown, my bare feet on cold marble. She's under my protection, Nico said, moving to the foot of the stairs, placing himself between Costello and me. Under our family's protection. Costello's eyes flickered to the wolf pendant at my throat. So I see. He smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. How fortunate for you to find such a unique assistant. The way he said assistant made my skin crawl. It was a pleasure to meet you, Miss Vasquez, he continued. I'm sure we'll see each other again soon. To the Russos, he added. Until the council meeting, gentlemen. As Costello and his men departed, tension lingered in the air like the aftermath of a storm. Nico took the stairs 2 at a time, reaching me with barely controlled urgency. Are you okay? He asked, his hands gripping my arms, eyes searching my face. I'm fine, I assured him. What was that about? Who was he? Nico glanced down at the foyer, where Matteo was speaking in rapid Italian to their security team. Antonio Costello, our family's oldest rival. His jaw tightened. And now he knows who you are. Why does that matter? His eyes met mine, dark with concern. Because he now sees you as a way to get to me. I felt cold despite the warmth of his hands on my arms. I don't understand. I'm just your assistant. No, he said quietly. You were never just that. Before I could ask what he meant, Matteo called up. Nico, we need to talk, now. Go back to my room, Nico told me. I'll come for you when it's safe. Safe? Nico, what's happening? But he was already moving down the stairs, conferring in urgent tones with his brother. I stood alone, the weight of the wolf pendant suddenly heavy against my skin. I returned to his childhood room, my mind racing. Something had shifted tonight. Some invisible boundary crossed. The way Costello had looked at me, like I was a valuable chess piece unexpectedly revealed on the board. The fear in Nico's eyes when he'd seen me on the stairs. An hour passed before the door finally opened and Nico entered, his bow tie undone, looking exhausted. The gala's over, he said. We've sent everyone home. Because of Costello? He nodded, moving to sit on the edge of the bed. He crossed a line coming here tonight. His eyes met mine. Seeing you. I sat beside him, close, but not touching. You're going to explain now, all of it. For a moment, I thought he might refuse. Then he sighed, running a hand through his hair. The Costello family has been trying to take our territory for generations. My grandfather established boundaries, rules of engagement that prevented all-out war. His expression hardened. Antonio Costello no longer feels bound by those rules. The shipment he mentioned? A ghost of a smile touched Nico's lips. Let's just say certain items were redirected, a reminder of our family's reach. And now he's retaliating. Yes. Nico's gaze turned to the wall of notations. His lifelong record of isolation. My condition has always been viewed as a weakness by our rivals. A vulnerability to exploit, his voice lowered. Until you. Me? I don't understand. He turned to face me fully. Do you know how Costello knew about you? The miracle cure for the allergic Don? Because word has spread throughout the organization that for the first time in my life, I can be near a woman without risking death. His hand found mine, warm and solid. That changes everything, Elena. How? I whispered, my heart pounding at his touch. In our world, succession matters. Family matters. His eyes held mine, intense and unwavering. My brother has 3 sons, but I've never been able to even consider a family of my own. My condition made it impossible to imagine. His fingers tightened on mine, until you. The implication of his words hit me with physical force. Nico, you can't possibly be suggesting. I'm not suggesting anything, he interrupted gently. I'm explaining why Costello sees you as valuable. Why you're in danger now. His expression softened. And why I can't let you go. Can't let me go? I pulled my hand away, standing abruptly. I'm not your possession, Nico. No, he agreed, rising to stand before me. You're something far more precious. Before I could respond, shouts erupted from downstairs, followed by the unmistakable sound of gunfire. Nico moved with startling speed, pushing me behind him as the bedroom door burst open. Marco stood there, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. They're back, he gasped. With more men, we need to move, now. Nico grabbed my hand, pulling me toward a bookshelf in the corner. He pressed something hidden behind a row of books, and the shelf swung outward, revealing a narrow passageway. Family escape route, he explained grimly. Used it during Prohibition raids. It leads to the boathouse. Marco handed Nico a gun, which he tucked into his waistband. I'll hold them here, Marco said. Get her to safety. The look that passed between the men contained volumes. Respect, loyalty, the possibility of final goodbye. If I don't call within an hour, take her to the lake house, Nico instructed. No one outside the family knows about it. Marco nodded once, then was gone. The secret door closing behind us. The passage was narrow and musty, lit only by Nico's phone flashlight. He moved confidently, one hand gripping mine, the other holding the light. What's happening? I asked, my voice sounding small in the confined space. Who's attacking? Costello, Nico replied grimly. He was testing our defenses earlier. Now he's making his move. For what? He glanced back at me, his face shadowed. For you. We emerged in a small boathouse at the edge of the estate, where a sleek speedboat waited at the dock. Nico helped me aboard, then untied the moorings. Where are we going? I asked as the engine rumbled to life. Somewhere safe. He navigated the boat away from the dock, into the dark waters of the lake that bordered the Russo estate. Somewhere no one will think to look for us. As we sped across the black water, I looked back at the mansion. Now illuminated by flashing lights, police cars, I realized with a jolt. The Russo family mansion, under siege. And I was the cause. The lake house was actually a modernist cabin nestled among pine trees on the opposite shore. Smaller than the mansion, but no less luxurious. Nico secured the boat and led me inside, activating a sophisticated security system as soon as we entered. We should be safe here, he said, moving to the large windows to scan the lake behind us. No pursuit was visible on the dark water. I stood in the center of the main room, still barefoot, still in my emerald gown, feeling utterly displaced. This is insane, I whispered. All of this because I don't make you sneeze? Nico turned from the window, his expression softening as he took in my disheveled state. Not just that, he said quietly. Because you saved my life that night in the alley. Because you've shown me a different way of existing in the world. Because for the first time, I can imagine a future that includes more than just survival. He moved closer, stopping just before me. I never meant to drag you into my world, Elena. I just wanted you in it. The raw honesty in his voice broke something inside me, some final barrier of resistance. Without thinking, I stepped forward and pressed my lips to his. He froze for a heartbeat, then his arms encircled me, pulling me against him as he deepened the kiss. Unlike any other man I'd ever been with, he didn't smell of artificial cologne or chemical-laden products, just clean skin, the subtle scent that was uniquely his. When we finally broke apart, his eyes searched mine. I've imagined doing that since the night you saved me, he confessed. I've been afraid to imagine it, I replied honestly. His hand came up to cup my cheek. I know my world is dangerous. I know what my family is, what I am. His thumb traced my lower lip. But with you, I can be more. Better. What happens now? I asked, leaning into his touch. Now we wait. Marco will contact us when it's safe. His expression turned serious. And then I end this threat permanently. For both our sakes. And after that, a smile, genuine, hopeful, transformed his face. After that, Elena Vasquez, we write our own story. One where I'm not defined by my limitations, and you're not defined by your circumstances. He pressed his forehead to mine. If you'll stay with me. As dawn broke over the lake, painting the water gold and rose, I made my choice. Not out of fear or necessity, but out of the love that had been growing since that rainy night when I found him gasping for breath in an alley. I'll stay, I whispered, the wolf pendant warm against my skin. No longer a symbol of possession, but of belonging, of finding home in the most unexpected place. In the arms of a man who, against all odds and allergies, could finally breathe freely with me beside him.